Okay guys, welcome back to the Countertops Training Center. We have some special guests here today. We've got 3 new potential dealers here at the Countertops Training Center going through a 3.5-day training class with us. One of them's already signed on. She's in Houston, Texas. We also have somebody here from Fresno, California, and another gentleman here from Tucson, Arizona. So we're looking to add on 3 new dealers this week. You might see them walking around because they want to see exactly what's going on during this video. We made a video and posted it last week with those really cool colors that we did, the black with the really pretty blue and purple. We're going to do something very, very similar to that today just because the attendees of the class, that's what they wanted to see. They're like, man, that was cool. We watched that video last night. We want to see you do that in person. So we're just going to kind of recreate that video with just a couple of little slight changes, nothing major. And here we go. So we're going to do this as a hand marble, which is our most popular technique as far as videos go. People seem to really, really like the way the colors jump off the screen at you when we do our hand marble technique. So we want to be very random with how we add our colors. This is just our liquid black. I'm going to save just a little bit of this black in my bucket because I'm going to do a little add-on at the end of this today and just see how it turns out. I don't know that I'll like it because I haven't tried it on a sample yet, but we're going to have a little bit of fun today. So we're going to set this off to the side. Now this is our Ocean's Blue along with a very liberal amount of our stakeout, which is the new name for the old sparkle. So this is going to have a lot of reflectivity to it. And again, I'm going to save some of this color in the bucket.
Is that metallic flakes?
This is a metallic color, and I've added the sparkle to it. Again, I'm just trying to be very, very random. Okay, saving some of my color. Whoops. Now, I didn't talk to you guys real quick. I just did it. Remember, I was talking to you guys first day of class talking about pour room shoes. So if you didn't notice, I put on my Crocs, okay? Because this thing is going to drip on my floor, so I'm likely going to step in wet epoxy, and I don't want to track this all over the entire shop. So anytime you're pouring a countertop surface, it's going to drip. When you're doing all your samples, we got you on nice tables with lips and no epoxies hitting the floor. But anytime you're going to pour a countertop surface where it's going to be dripping on the floor, you want to have your pour room shoes on, okay? Pro tip for you guys at home. So this is our new color. We had a couple of suggestions in the comment section of the last video, and the color suggestion that I like the most is sapphire so far. So I think that's kind of what we're leaning towards, is calling this color sapphire. I'm going to pour some of this sapphire on top of the other blue, and I'm going to pour some of this sapphire by itself, okay? The sapphire by itself, where it's not with the blue, is not going to stand out dramatically in the black. Like, it may not even really show up very much on camera, but I just want to see what kind of subtle variations we can get. See how dark that is laying in that black? But I think it'll be kind of cool. But I definitely want to make sure I get a decent amount of the sapphire inside of that other blue, because these two blues stacked together are very cool. And don't be afraid to ask questions, guys, if you have any as they come up. And those of you watching at home, if you have questions, put them in the comment section. We'll be happy to get to your questions, get you some good answers. All right, just pour a little bit of random sapphire everywhere. Okay, we're going to save a little bit in the bucket again. So now for our hand marble technique, just like always, we're just going to dig in with our gloved hand. We got our 2 layers of gloves on just so we can peel this one off whenever we're done. We're going to cover the entire piece just like it's all one. I'm not going around any specific colors. I'm not going around anything else. But after I'm done with this, I'm going to add something else at the end. So I'm just going to dig in. I want to try to cover this countertop nice and evenly with this epoxy, but be very random with the strokes that I make with my hand. I want to use a little bit of pressure on my fingertips for a moment and then take it off and use more of the palm of my hand and then put a little bit more pressure on my fingertips again, because I want this to be as varied as I possibly can get it with the way these colors lay out. And you can already see these colors look almost electric. But the key is being as random as you possibly can be with the strokes that you make with your fingers, your hand. So as I'm going, I want to make sure early in the process that I really, really, really lubricate these faces with all this beautiful epoxy that's flowing over the sides. The earlier in the process that I can get these faces covered with a nice thick coat of epoxy, the less work I'm going to have to do to make these look good at the end. Okay. All right. Stubborn spot. Oh. Okay. Josh, will you come in behind me and fill in those couple of little holes? Give them a good tap. Tap that. Don't be scared to overlap some of your other strokes. Don't be scared to kind of leave a little gap and then come back in and overlap some of your other stuff. Just change the pressure in your hand so you don't create just a continuously repetitive pattern. Getting those faces nice and coated. Nice thick coat of our epoxy. Now, for those of you that's never been to Phoenix, Arizona before, you may think it's always hot here. And in the summertime, that's true. But this is a desert. And right now, this time of year, it gets very cold at night. And so it's very cool in the shop. The epoxy's cold, the surface is cold. So I'm actually going to run the torch over this real quickly before I hit it with isopropyl, because I want to warm that epoxy up just a little bit so I can get some cool effect out of it. If I spray my epoxy with isopropyl while it's super cold, I won't get near as dramatic of an effect out of it as I will if I warm it up to the normal temperature. We're always talking about we want it to be between 65 and 75 degrees when you're pouring this epoxy. So I'm going to try to warm this epoxy up just a little bit with this torch. I'm not cooking it. I'm not bearing down on it. I'm just trying to warm it up a little bit. It's going to loosen that epoxy up just a little bit. If you've got a lot of experience with epoxy, you know the warmer that the epoxy gets, the runnier it gets. And that's all I'm trying to accomplish, just warm it up just a little bit. You will see some air bubbles popping, but that's not the purpose of what I'm doing right now. This pass is strictly just to warm it up a little bit. Okay, so before we spray this with isopropyl, I'm going to create myself another little dirty pour cup that I'm going to actually add a vein inside of this hand marble before I spray with the isopropyl, just to kind of give it something a little bit extra and something a little bit different. And pour some of that in. Then we're going to go with some of our other blue and pour that in. We're going to go with a little bit of black, and we're just going to keep alternating these colors until we use up all this epoxy. And then we know how much epoxy we have to try to pour out and make a cool little vein. Finish this off with some more of our oceans. Yeah, I think we're going to call that good. Okay. So I like to, anytime I'm going to do like a dirty pour type of scenario, is I like to, after I pour the colors, I like to take the stick and just back and forth like 2 to 3 times, just to make sure that I don't have any gigantic spots when I pour it out, that it's just one solid color. And I'm just going to kind of pick a path that I kind of like, and I'm just going to pour this in. Okay. Okay. You might be wondering, you know, what do I do with that vein after I pour it in? Do I leave it alone, or do I try to manipulate it a little bit? The truth is, you can do a little bit of either one that you want to. What I'm going to do now is, since I poured out these 2 spots, is I'm going to manipulate the one a little bit with a stick prior to spraying it with isopropyl, and I'm going to leave the other one completely alone. So you guys at home and you guys here in class can kind of see the difference on what it'll do after it's done. And you may want to take a quick peek at these drips. See how it's almost coming down in curtains? The reason why it's doing that is because the epoxy's cold. Okay?
Like this?
Yeah, it's thicker.
Okay.
Because it's cold. So it's staying together more instead of so many drips. Okay? It's not hurting anything. It's just the epoxy's colder. So whenever you see that, just know that it's going to cure just a little bit slower that day because it's colder. All right. So I'm just going to kind of come in here and try to manipulate this just enough to where it doesn't look like I just poured it. I still want it to look like a pretty defined vein running through here. I just don't want it to just look like I just poured it. I want to full with these edges. You see that little haze that's coming up around my stick? So that's being caused because the epoxy's colder, and the black pigment has a little bit more solvent in it. So you do get a slightly different effect in the epoxy. It's not hurting anything. It just is one of those characteristics. So, okay. So now we're going to hit this with some isopropyl alcohol, just like we always do. We will always want to test spray. Make sure we got our sprayer working the way that we want it. It looks good. Actually, I'm a little bit light right here. If you want to come in here, Chris, see how I can see through the epoxy right here? So I'm going to I got some options here. I'm going to get some of this epoxy that's just dripping off. And I'm just going to add a little bit more right there. Just kind of run my hands through it, and now that'll go away. You'll never know that was ever there.
Self-leveled.
Yep. Okay. So throw this away. Clean my hands off a little bit so I don't make such a mess on the spray bottle. Y'all liking this so far?
That color.
It's pretty vibrant, isn't it?
Yeah, that color is awesome.
Okay. So we're going to test spray. Make sure our isopropyl is coming out the way that we want it. Okay, I like it. Now we're going to give this thing a nice lather, just like we always do with our samples in the pour room. Now you can see this is reacting slower than what it did in the pour room, and that's because it's colder. Okay, it's still going to do it, so don't just keep pounding it with the isopropyl. Okay, you want to get everything covered, but you don't want to keep washing it out. Give it a couple minutes to actually do its thing, and it will continue to work. Okay. So you guys can come on in here up nice and close and take a peek. Just try not to step into the wet epoxy that's dripping and start to see some of the detail coming out.
Dude, it's crazy. That's awesome. That's what I wanted to see. It's pretty cool.
Yep.
Yeah. Sapphire's nice.
Yeah, sapphire is a completely different color. It has completely different characteristics than any other color that we have. That translucence that it has is very, very, very nice. And see, it looks like it's 2 inches deep right there because of that translucence of that sapphire.
Yep.
It's very cool.
So that band you didn't even touch, it just kind of leveled itself out.
Yep. So we'll see when this is all said and done, we'll see kind of which way we like it better. Where I poured in the vein, where we manipulated it a little bit, or where we just poured it in and kind of left it alone. Or maybe we don't like either one of them. You don't have to put those in there because I've done a million hand marble videos that don't have any veins in there. I just thought we would do something kind of fun, something kind of cool. So let's just say that right now I don't like this little area right here because it's got too much blue without enough variance in it. I'll just take a little bit of my epoxy and just pour me a little bit out. And then I can come in here and manipulate this just a little bit, kind of spread it out. And I'm just going to give myself a nice little accent spot inside of this piece. I feel like Bob Ross sometimes. People's like, no, don't mess it up. And then like, oh, okay, that looks cool. So just, if something doesn't look right to you, just kind of keep playing with it. You'll get it right. We have a saying in class, you haven't screwed up till you give up. So if something doesn't look right, it probably is not right. Like I don't really like the way this is shaped right here, so I'm just going to take the stick and just kind of come in and re-manipulate that just a little bit. And then when I re-hit it with that isopropyl, you'll never be able to tell that I fooled with it. But it'll get rid of the part of it that I don't like. Now we're just going to re-hit these spots that I just changed a little bit. And now they'll blend right in and you'll never know. But see, to me, that was just a little bit too straight on blue. And by adding that black, now I've just kind of killed it a little bit and it looks more natural that way. So before we stop with this piece on camera, I want to talk about faces. Okay, this is the first time that you guys have really got to experience faces in class. Faces are pretty easy with our formula of epoxy. The epoxy is not too thin, it's not too thick. You get good flow, but it doesn't flow for as long as some of the other options that you have in the marketplace. And as long as you get the faces coated early in your process, you don't really have much trouble keeping them smooth and even and keeping the epoxy flowing evenly. The exception to that would be if you have areas on the face that maybe had a burr that you weren't able to get sanded smooth. You know, anywhere that the epoxy can meet tension, meet resistance, it's not going to flow smoothly. Okay, so as long as you've done a good job of setting up your faces and everything, the epoxy is going to flow. Now, how do we deal with faces? How do we correct things if they go wrong? A nice quality brush. Okay, these things are about $6, $7 a piece if you buy them just off the shelf at Home Depot. But if you buy them in bulk, you can get them down to about $3.50, $4 a piece. Don't buy cheap brushes because they lose a lot of bristles. And you want that really soft, flexible, because you don't want to be cutting grooves into that face. The number one tip to making faces look good, if you have to address any kind of drip, anything that you don't like on a face, is you always work from bottom to top. So if I come in here to this face, first off, I'm going to saturate my brush with epoxy, because if I touch a dry brush onto a face with epoxy, it's going to pull the epoxy off that face to saturate the brush. So I'm going to get some of my drippings, or I'm going to go to my bucket. I'm going to get epoxy on my brush before it ever touches this face. But when I come to the face, I always want to start at the bottom and work my way up. The reason being is, if I start at the top and work my way down, I am removing epoxy from that face. And that is the thing that I do not want to do. I always am just looking to keep the epoxy on the face as long as I can. And the way that we do that is we work from the bottom to the top. Okay, so let's just say this face over here is looking pretty good, but I've got plenty of room behind me. So if everybody wants to squeeze their way in back over here, I'm going to intentionally mess up a spot. Let's just go right here because it's a little bit lighter. It'll probably show up better on camera. Let's just say that we had a spot that it wasn't flowing very good down that face. Okay, I've got nice drips right here, nice clean masking. I'm going to come down here, get my brush saturated, chop it a little bit. I want to make sure that I got good epoxy everywhere in that brush. Get those bristles saturated. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm just going to drag it up. Okay. Now, I've reintroduced epoxy to that face. I didn't drag any of it off. Now, gravity is going to take back over, and it's going to pull back down this face, and it's going to look like everything else does. Once you have a spot that has shown you that the epoxy is having a little bit of trouble to flow, that's a spot that you need to keep your eyes on over the next hour and a half, because there's something there that's causing it, whether it be like a tiny hump in the countertop somewhere. There's some reason that the epoxy is not wanting to flow there, so that's a trouble point that you want to make sure that you keep your eyes on. Okay? Because if it did it once, it's likely going to try to do it again. Okay? Make sense? Okay. So right here, we've got a little bit of a thin spot. So I'm just going to kind of go ahead and brush a little bit more epoxy back on there. And then you can't even tell where I did that over here. Okay. Do we have anything over there you can see, Josh, that we can do?
Faces wise, no.
But like I'm telling you guys, if you get those faces coated early with that nice, thick, heavy coat, the epoxy will flow.
Got it. Like that first pour, make sure you get it nice and over that first pour.
Yeah,
Yep.
on this side.
Yep.
Over here, Troy.
Yep.
You got a little bit here and here, but they could,
Okay.
so you can see that.
Okay. So this is something good to point out on camera, Chris. So right here, remember our epoxy's cold. Okay. Right here, we've got an area that is actively dripping down the face. I'm going to leave that alone for a few minutes and see if that continues to just travel down. If it doesn't move in the next 10 minutes, then I will address it. But that should flow all the way down. Okay. Now, if the thin spot started up here and all the epoxy went around it like that, that would be a spot. There's something at the top of that that's causing it to go around. But this one right here, it looks like it's actively traveling down the face. So we're going to leave that alone for about 10 minutes and then we'll come back and look at it. Because the less times that you can touch this face, the better off you are.
Better off, okay.
Okay? Because once you touch it, that's a spot that now you're really kind of hyper-focused on, making sure that it doesn't do it again. The more that it could be, like it's already in the middle of that, is already starting to touch the bottom. It's moving. So if you can leave them alone, you want to leave them alone. But if it's a dry spot, like a completely dry spot, or you can see the epoxy actively going around that spot, you definitely want to go ahead and address it. Okay? What do y'all think about this color combo? I personally like it better without the purple in it. Yeah. What do you think, Josh?
I prefer with purple. It adds depth to the black.
I see. To me, the sapphire takes care of that. To me, but you know, that's kind of the cool thing about epoxy is everybody has their own take. You know, Everybody has an opinion on what they like, and that's why we definitely want our customers to be picking from samples, not from pictures, and not from saying, oh, well, I like that, but I want a little bit of blue in there. Well, a little bit of blue is way too subjective. You know, I want you to tell me exactly, you know, okay, I like that. Okay, so that's going to conclude this video. This is our hand marble. We did a little bit of a dirty pour vein for one of our training classes here. If you would like to become a dealer or possibly interested in becoming a dealer and you want to come in for a 3-day training class to learn the ins and outs of what it is like to run an epoxy countertop business, contact us on our website, which is counterthelletterai.com. Again, that's counterthelletterai.com. Look for available dates that you can come in and take this class. Guys, would you say so far this class has been well worth the investment coming in and learning about the counterintelligence way?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Sweet. So we look forward to hearing from you guys. If you have anything that you want to see in the comment section, please engage us. I'm happy to put out any type of epoxy countertops that you guys are interested in. And as always, from everybody here, we'll see you on the next one.